there's something to be said for actually in whatever field you're in, the actual rolling up your sleeves and doing it and testing the waters in real time practice versus just the theory of how that sounds.
There are some things I would just rather pay somebody to do for me because I absolutely do not enjoy doing them for myself. And one of those things is decluttering and organizing. And that is why our guest today, Laurie Palau, has had so much success in her business as both a professional organizer and then a coach to other professional organizers, because there is high demand for this industry, for this type of a service provider. Today, we're going to break down exactly how to be successful in this field when you are acquiring clients, how to get your name out there. And even though Laurie's path might not be completely replicatable because time just changes things, there are some core principles that you're going to learn about today that you can translate to your own business, even if you're not necessarily looking into becoming a decluttering coach or a decluttering service provider. So get ready to take some notes because class is in session with Laurie Palau. Laurie, welcome to Millionaire University. I'm so happy to have you here today. I'm so excited to hear about your business. So thank you for taking time out of what I know is a busy schedule to come and share your mission, your journey with our listeners.
I am so happy to be here. So let's do it.
Let's dive in. Okay, Give us a little step into the day of your life. What are you doing right now? Just give us the overview of what your business is. What's your entrepreneurial journey? Not the journey yet, but just today. What's going on?
Yeah. So today is really interesting. So I have a professional organizing business, which is sort of like the big umbrella because that's a huge spectrum. And today I actually was leading a group of other community-based women leaders, and it was specifically geared towards women entrepreneurs, although that's not all that I do, but I love being in that space. And I had a mentoring call with another professional organizer who's looking to build their business. And I have a few check-ins with some clients that I do one-on-one work with to kind of help gear them up. And then on the personal side, I'm organizing my own life in terms of, I don't know when this episode's dropping, but getting ready for Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holidays, and kind of just trying to keep my own personal life on the rails.
Isn't that just the most fun part of entrepreneurship is that balancing act that's never actually perfect, but it's so important we talk about because we're never just entrepreneurs building empires. We are human beings building businesses while we have lives. It's so crucial.
Yes. And I've been in the entrepreneurial space for, the better part of my career, it seems. Like I started in corporate America and then transitioned into entrepreneurship a few years later. And, it's so funny. My husband's a corporate guy and we're both super busy and we're both sort of type A when it comes to work, but it just shows up really differently.
Yeah.
And I think there's a unique breed of people that thrive in that entrepreneurial space, despite all of the different hats that we need to wear.
Yeah, I agree with you. So you kind of teased on that you were in corporate America. Where did the business come from? Did you always have a knack for organization, or was it kind of like hey, I want to step into this online space, build a business. That would be a really cool thing I'm kind of interested in. What came first, chicken or the egg?
It's a little bit of both, right? So I've always been organized. And when, I always say I'm on the back nine. So just to kind of set a frame for people. So I'm in my early to mid 50s, right? Not quite mid yet, but I'm in the 50s. I've raised kids. And if I look back at the breadcrumbs through my life, there was a definite through line of me just being organized and very process driven. So my brain has always just kind of operated in that way, but it wasn't what I set out to do. And dating myself, and I know that you've got listeners of all ages and spectrums and whatnot. You couldn't go to college and study entrepreneurship like you could today. Mm-hmm. There was no professional organizing as an industry back then. So this was nothing that I ever set out to do to say, hey, this is how I want to make a living. It was more a means to an end. And so my professional background was in executive recruiting. And that's what I did before I started my business. And I had to be organized in my life in order to get the things I wanted to do done. So it was really just a means to an end. And it got to a point after getting married, having kids, settling down, trying to juggle work-life balance, air quotes, that I was in a position to be able to say, hey, I think I could take some of these gifts, if you will, that I have and channel them into something to help other people who I see are struggling in these areas that come naturally to me. And so I was fortunate because my husband was a corporate guy. And I always say this, that we were able to take a little bit of a leap of faith because there's so much risk when you're starting any type of an entrepreneurial journey. And that safety net of his corporate job and us being kind of fiscally responsible allowed me to dive into that and had no idea where it would go.
Yeah. Okay, so you were kind of there as a pioneer in this space or just early on when I love that you said that. You guys listening, 20 years ago, we couldn't have done 90% of the things I feel like we're doing to earn revenue right now. And maybe that's like a stretch, but I do feel like we live in the Wild West still of entrepreneurship with the internet, and the evolution is so fast and it's so crazy. There's things every day that I'm like, wow, that's a business. I mean, even content creation as a business still blows my mind. I'm like, you couldn't have done this. You had to still have all these other things. Now you can literally just get paid to put your face on the internet and create content. So I love that you stepped into that early on. So what did that look like? Because you had the safety net, like you mentioned, and even starting businesses like we do today, there's not a ton of overhead required. It's kind of like the risk of time, the risk of investment in some way, but it's a little different than buying a building or investing in, brick and mortar. So what did this look like for you? Where did you kind of begin?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And for me, everything boiled down to time. How was I using my time? What time was I investing? And a lot of what I do, and if you have listeners out there that are maybe thinking, maybe they're in a corporate job and they're thinking about starting a side hustle or moving into the world of entrepreneurship. For me, it was how much time do I have realistically to give? When I started my business, just frame of reference, it was 2009. There was no Instagram. There was no Pinterest. Facebook was still sort of at its infancy and wasn't used and leveraged the way it is today. So I was like, how am I going to get this messaging out? Who is my audience going to be? And, it was all about how can I make money? For me, it was this simple. How can I make money during the times that my kids were in school? So I had this 9 to 3 window of what can I do that's going to allow me to do that, have flexibility, and be kind of low-hanging fruit. Meaning I don't have to invest a lot. I don't have to go back to school. I can kind of almost hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. And those were sort of my criteria, and I didn't overthink it. So there were certain checks and balances that I did, and making sure my business was, insured and I had it legally registered. And I did kind of hit those checkpoints. Yeah. But other than that, I didn't invest a ton. I wanted to get that social proof. Very early on, I knew that, especially in my business, that trust and referral and relationships was going to be really big for the space that I was in. Yeah. And so it was really about getting out there in front of people and finding out where their pain points were and trying to come from a place of service. Mm-hmm. And that was always what was important to me. And as my business has grown over the past, 15 going on 20 16, years, I look back at all of the different ways the business has grown and expanded, going from just doing clients to writing a blog to doing speaking to then writing a book and having a podcast and mentoring other people, all of those different things. I leaned into where people said that they needed help, as opposed to me trying to solve a problem that I didn't even know was happening.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Oh, 100% makes sense. I think a lot of times, and this is why I asked, even in the beginning, what came first? Was it like, oh, I want to kind of figure out what business I can create? Or was it, I know what my skill set is. I can come in here and figure out a problem that I can solve. Because so many people come at it from the angle of just entrepreneurship sounds fun. I'll give that a whirl. What's something I could sell, And it's so much harder to try and shape that and figure out a problem that doesn't exist than to get in there. I'm curious. I know we can't really say replicate these steps because the scenery has changed, right? Mm-hmm. But would you still recommend to someone else, and maybe you do in your mentorship, that they do that first, that they get in there and they actually work with people? Or do you ever recommend just go create like a course, go create a program to solve a problem if you don't really know?
So I have mixed feelings, right? I don't want to ever put a prescriptive thing at like a one blanket state, right? Because you never know, something might work for somebody in their specific area. There's a couple things that I will say. I think there's something to be said for actually, in whatever field you're in, the actual rolling up your sleeves and doing it and testing the waters in real-time practice versus just the theory of how that sounds. There's something to be said for that. The theory of this sounds great. Oh, I'm going to create a digital course and I'm going to do it once and then I'm going to make money while I sleep. Versus, which does sound great. Who doesn't want that? Versus, okay, let me look at the reality of it is I really need to market it. What do I have to do in getting people to sign up? And how is this going to actually play out? And I think a lot of times people, and I've been guilty of this myself, spending all this time in the planning and solving a problem before I know for a fact that either A, that's a problem that people want solved, and B, that I actually like doing it versus the thought of liking doing it. Because there's a difference. And in the organizing space specifically, I get a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I love to organize. I'm super organized. And I say, that's great. Like, obviously, that's a starting point and a springboard because nobody gets into this particular business if they aren't good at it and like it themselves, right? It's not like I'm going to become a financial analyst because there's, whatever. But there's a difference between doing it for yourself and doing it for other people and all the nuances that go on. So I say, before you invest and spend all this money on building a website and invest all of this on all these assets and bells and whistles, just pick a handful of your friends and family, start working with a few people and test it out. See what you like about it, what you don't like about it before you make into this investment and start to really refine, because we have this image of our mind of what we think it's going to look like. And rarely in entrepreneurship is it A, that glamorous, and B, it doesn't mean that you're not going to want to do it, but there's things that you maybe never thought of that you need to factor in.
Yeah. Well, even for myself I've dabbled and tried so many things, and I love that it's the failing fast, right? And sometimes it's put too much energy and too many months into a project to only find later I didn't want to do it and actually hated it, or there was no demand for it. But a lot of times it's been so powerful to kind of walk myself through it, and I vision write it a little bit, and I imagine it actually being my life. And even sometimes that will solve the problem or not solve the problem. It'll prevent me from going in a rabbit hole I don't actually want to be in. But I've even gone so reflective as to be like, do I actually like coaching or do I just like talking to people? Maybe, the medium is actually just podcasting, but do I want to integrate with you? Do I want to be a service? I've had to learn the hard way that I love the concept of marketing, but I don't like doing marketing for other people. I like teaching them, but I don't want to get in there and actually build the assets for people. And so if I had gone and tried to build this huge agency model, which there was a time when I thought that's what I wanted. And very quickly I was like, wait a minute, hold on, actually no. So I think that's really, really sound advice to, and I love that it wasn't prescriptive. It wasn't saying this is the absolute best way that you're supposed to do this. Absolutely do not create a program until you've worked with at least this many people. But I think it's a good step back rule of thumb to just say, figure out yourself, figure out if you really want to do this long term. And that's not to say you have to figure it out in a month or anything, but you'll save yourself a lot of money, heartache, time, energy, and I think confidence. Because if you build something and it fails, maybe it wasn't a failure. It was just like you put a little too much energy into something you were never really supposed to do. And so now you've got this narrative that, oh, I'm not cut out for this. It's like, no, you just weren't cut out for that, but you are supposed to do this over here.
Absolutely. And also to piggyback on this, and I think especially now as we move more and more into AI and there's so many things out there, I've always led by authenticity. It's like one of my core values. What you see is what you get. When in my podcast, when people would talk to me and they're like, oh my God, you sound just like you do on the show. And I'm like, that is me. I am tried and true. And I pride myself on that. I think when you show up and you genuinely have a heart for service in whatever industry it is, whatever coaching model, whatever business you're starting, if you are passionate and you are coming from of course we want to make money, it's our business, but you're coming at, I can bring value to your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can demonstrate that. That comes through in a way that in this world where you don't know what to believe and what's real and what's not real. And there's so many people out there selling, whether it's digital courses or content creation or whatever, and you don't know who to trust and who to buy. When you can lock those people in a way that is truly authentic to who you are and your passion and your gifts, that is what secures your users, your customers, your clients.
Yeah, I agree.
And for me, I could say that is what I attribute to the growth and success. I wasn't necessarily the smartest or the best or the whatever, but I was consistent, or I am consistent, and I'm honest, and I show up in my true authentic self, and people know that.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, we kind of went down that rabbit hole, which I love that rabbit hole so much. But I do want to bring this back because, I ask because we can't replicate your journey fully, but I want to just kind of see if somebody were coming in, maybe they want to do exactly what you're doing, whether it's decluttering or some other form of, I want to start with maybe a service and then maybe branch this out and expand. Tell us a little bit about how you got those first paying customers. What did that look like for you back then that would probably still translate today?
Yeah, and this is a true story right here. So again, you got to remember, we didn't have the luxury of using social media the way that people can now, right? And so my kids were little when I started my business, and I lived in a neighborhood, and my original business model was very direct to consumer, so D2C. And so I created a flyer, legitimately a flyer of, you need some organizing services, if these are your pain points. It was a quick one sheet. And I would push my little one in the stroller, and we would walk around, and I would put flyers in people's mailboxes. I live local. Here's a little mini about me. And my little one would say, my mom's in the business of flyers, because that's what, if people asked her what she did, she would say, my mom's in the business of flyers, because that was what she saw. And it was really that very old school grassroots. I'm going to just start with the low-hanging fruit of who do I know? And when I coach and mentor other people, whether it's in this industry or just in any other industry, I talk about like your spheres of influence. And it's always best to start with who do you know and go from there. And then from there, before you're trying, because you've already established credibility with people that you know. And establishing that credibility for most people, whether you're starting a marketing business or you're starting a coaching business, if someone sees you as qualified in that particular area, now now you have to front other objections like cost and all the other factors. But that trust of, are you the right person for this job, is already been addressed. So you could check that off your list. So you can, if you start with the people that you've already established that trust and qualification, especially in my industry, maybe it's people that have been to your house and they see how organized you are. Maybe they see that you're not constantly running late because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever the fill in the blank is. Now you've established that trust. And now it's a matter of just educating them on how you can help them. So that's kind of what I would say. So start with whoever you know. And then from there, do it for free. There's no reason in this day and age with so many tools at our disposal, and yes, it can be oversaturated, that you cannot leverage where your people are. So if you're targeting a market and they're all on TikTok, lean into TikTok. If you're in a market where the people are on LinkedIn, lean into LinkedIn. You don't have to be everywhere. Just kind of pick an area where those people are and show up. And that's how I started. And then from there, those other opportunities will then start to present themselves.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that. So after you've gotten those first few clients, for you, were you offering like a massive amount of different types of services, or did you over time kind of niche that down, or did you start?
No. Yeah. So originally, I kind of in my mind had a target demographic that was busy moms like myself, because I knew I could speak to that. That was who I was targeting. And in the organizing world, there's such a spectrum. Even there wasn't as identified, but there still was. It's like, You have people that are hoarders. You have people that are downsizing. You have people that are, turning into empty nesters. There's so many move management. And I knew that I really wanted to target that busy mom. I'm overworked, overscheduled, and I need system strategies and help.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of how my dialogue was when I was reaching out to people. And that is how the business grew. And then sometimes I would take on a job and I was like, oh, I don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would try it. And I think for a lot of people, you got to kind of go back to what I said at the top of the episode. You need to kind of actually do it to see if you like it or you don't. Like I had a couple jobs where I helped people pack up and move. And although it was financially lucrative because they were bigger scope jobs, I didn't really enjoy it as much. It was less strategy and more tactical. And I really liked getting into the psychology of clutter with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I was like, I don't really want to lean in there. I don't want to spend time doing that and building that part of my business when that's not really what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And so I tried different things along the way. I didn't just lock in. And then from there, I was like, wow, I left myself open to explore opportunities as they presented themselves. And then I became a little bit more discerning when I was able to and say, you know what, I'm not the right fit for that, but I know somebody who might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much
And I think
power in
clients appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think in any field, clients appreciate that.
Yeah. It's tricky. I think it's just a mindset shift from, I need to say yes to every single client because I need the money and my business needs to thrive. And the discipline of saying no because you're not the right fit for me. And I know there's somebody else who's a better fit for you. And now I'm making space for my ideal client so that I can actually help and build the business I love and not just the business I think I'm supposed to build. Yeah, there's
Correct.
a lot of power in that. So how long did you stay in the space of just like doing the services and getting hired by people before? And I know, again, like the internet evolved, things changed, there's opportunities here.
Sure.
But yeah, just kind of give us that timeline on what you'd recommend to someone else.
Yeah, without going through every single rung of the ladder, I would say there were a few jump points in my career. 2009 to 2013. 2013, I launched my Clutter Clinic speaker series. I had been up until that point doing primarily just working one-on-one with clients. So if you look at what kind of like your revenue stream buckets, if you will, is how I like to describe them, I had 100% of my revenue was based in residential clients. Maybe I was doing a little bit of like free speaking for more marketing and networking. Like I would speak at an event or something, but it wasn't a monetary thing. It was just more of a lead gen. I was doing blogging, but I wasn't necessarily doing it. It wasn't like for an ad revenue thing. It was more just a marketing vessel to get me to those clients. So being really like looking at how can I get myself out there? But then at some point I was like, I wanted to diversify the revenue stream. And that was a very intentional shift for me. And so I noticed I'm a little bit of a data nerd. And I noticed that there was a large portion of people that read my blog or followed me, subscribed to my newsletter, people that I knew in real life and online that weren't hiring me, but they were very interested in my content. So I had a captive audience, but they weren't converting to become a client. And so I started thinking, what do these people need that I can bring value that would convert them to a paying client, not just a follower?
Yeah.
And so I start by asking questions like, if I were to create like a workshop where it was a low-level commitment, lower price point, less personally invasive of having somebody come into your home and analyze your stuff and, all of that comes with it. Is this something that you think would be valuable to you to walk away with some DIY tips and strategies? And it was a resounding yes. So I kind of tested it by just putting it out there to my people. And I from then went to, a local friend of mine who has a restaurant with a back room. And I said, hey, if I were to put on a workshop, what would that look like? And developed this speaker series where people would pay to attend the series. And then they would walk away with their stuff. And it was that all of a sudden became another revenue stream. And so then I built that up for a few years. So now I had not all, everything in that one client bucket, but now I had paid speaking as another bucket. And so I did that for several years and I was still doing all the other things. And then the next big jump in my career was in 2017. And that was the launch of the podcast. And that happened organically and really was more of just an exercise of let me see. Again, there are people that have been podcasting forever, but then also 2017 in some ways in the podcasting space seems like 1,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I had really a very low expectation in the sense of I wasn't looking at it as a revenue stream where I think people get into podcasting or like you said, content creation now. And they're like, wait, I can actually turn this into a business. That was not my thought at the time. I was really looking at this as another platform for me to share my knowledge, my intellectual property. I had all this written content. Let me just share it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And from there, that's when I started getting feedback from other aspiring professional organizers and other existing professional organizers. And they were reaching out to me and they were like, can you teach me how to do this? Can you teach me how to grow my business? Mm. And so then I had this like aha light bulb moment of I can take what I've learned through pretty much trial and error and use this to help other women. It wasn't just women, but it was primarily women. I had a couple guys in there, but help other people fulfill their entrepreneurial journeys in this space. Mm. And I turned that into an revenue stream. And so all of these kind of things, there was a little bit of a design that happened, but the fact that I went into them really going, how can I serve the audience first, mm-hmm. I think is what helped make it successful.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think we've seen this many, many times here on the show with different guests where the thing you're doing now, you couldn't have even foreseen. A lot of times it didn't exist, like we said, before the internet came to be. And you just kind of have to start, like you said, with serving and solving one problem. And then that will compound mm-hmm. into so many other steps that you can add in those revenue streams. And I love that you kind of saw early on, this is a good way to have diversity, but not necessarily look at this as a means to an end with your public speaking and everything, where, yes, I could get in front of some of my ideal clients, but also like in and of itself, this is pretty cool. I can get paid to go and speak on this and have a totally separate revenue stream. So if somebody's coming into this, and even with the clients that you've helped grow their business, what do you find is like one of the biggest blocks that gets in their way outside of mindset? I know that's like a huge piece of it. But on a tactical level, is it a marketing challenge? Because even as we talked earlier, sometimes the marketing needs to guide the product development and vice versa.
And again, I hate being prescriptive, but I think for a lot of people, there's a couple of things. I am a real big believer of being strategic and carving out time to work on your business mm-hmm. and not just be the person in your business. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, when you are a professional organizer, if you spend 5 days a week on site with clients, not only are you going to burn out physically, mm-hmm. right? Because it's a lot, but you are not giving yourself the time and space to be strategic, mm-hmm. to think about marketing, to follow up on the administrative side of things, to do the social media, to prospect for new business. There are all of these other parts to running and being an entrepreneur that we talked about wearing all of the different hats. Mm-hmm. And I get it when you're first starting out and you don't have money and you're wearing all the hats and you're figuring out the parts of the business that you like, that you don't like, that you're good at, that you aren't. I know for me, and I pay all of the household bills and I do all of that home, but I did not want to deal with the books in my business. So as soon as I started making enough money, I hired a bookkeeper. That for me was like the biggest thing because it was something that was a thorn in my side. And so as an entrepreneur, being able to either A, look at your time as I always say, look at your calendar like a closet, right? You only have so much space mm-hmm. and say, what are the areas that I'm going to focus in on and what are the areas that I'm going to outsource or delegate? Because there are all of these different aspects of the business that need to happen. Mm-hmm. Essentially, if you want a holistic business that isn't going to get sacrificed in one area or another.
Yeah.
And so if as your business continues to grow, looking at what else can I take off my plate so that I can focus in on the areas that I really enjoy or that are going to make me the most money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think that is, especially when you're in the early stages, that is so tricky, and it's easier said than done because you don't necessarily have the capital to outsource yet, but you won't have the capital until you outsource some of those things. I was even thinking today, I'm in the middle of building a new program, and it's easy for me to just go make the slides for the slide deck, but I'm like, I probably should just hire someone to do this. It's nothing that I need to spend the time on. I could probably find someone I could pay. I mean, it would be worth a few $100s, right? To just be like, take my scripts, turn this into a slide deck. I trust that you'll be able to do this just as well as I will in Canva. But I think that's a hard, it does. It comes down to mindset, that hard place to just trust that this thing, this investment and this outsourcing is going to actually compound and build you more revenue. But yeah, I mean, even beyond before that step, it's just even the awareness of, let's be honest about the fact that when you're building a product and you're marketing, it kind of feels like this or that. It's, I only have time to make content today, or I only have time to work on my program, or I only have time to show up in the coaching call, or only have time to do the client work. So I think that is the challenge, is trying to wear all those hats and show up and be visible so that you continue to have a business and not getting stuck in just the operator place, because that can suck time and money.
Yeah. And that's why again, go back to my organizing brain. That's why I personally am a huge fan of time blocking and being able to assign chunks of time for different tasks, whether that's in my business, whether that's in my personal life. And I do that all the time. So it's like, okay, maybe this morning I'm going to focus in on business development calls or research for new potential clients, or now I'm going to focus in on the administrative stuff or the behind the scenes stuff. And this pocket of time, I'm going to actually dedicate to the doing of the job, the parts that I like. And so knowing tactically how to do it, and then also having the discipline to actually stick to it. And I have found the more you do it, the more then you almost feel like you have permission to say, okay, well, I don't have to check my email 50,000 times a day or be online in social media all day long. I can just assign this window of time for me to do this particular task.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. So as you have worked with people, as you've seen this, or I mean, even outside of working with people, for you personally in your business, you've obviously put in all the legwork to build an audience, and you've been at this for so long that you have that benefit of just the reach and the exposure. But for you, even on scaling your business, what does this look like? Is it mostly through organic content creation? Does the podcast drive a lot of the sales? Are you running ads to things? Like, kind of break down your funnel for us a little bit.
Okay, so this may sound very unpopular, but I don't run ads. I get all of my clients through organic reach. Now, I haven't done an experiment, but if I were to invest in ads, could that increase the amount of revenue that I have? I'm sure that playing the odds and doing math, it could. But for where I want to scale and what I have available, for me, focusing in on the organic reach is sufficient for what I need in this particular season of my life. Will that change at some point? Absolutely. But I can only look at what my bandwidth is and realistically how I want my business to scale. And that's another thing with entrepreneurship. I know for me, I love doing the job, and I have team members that help me, like I said, behind the scenes or podcast editing and other parts of the business that I'm not good at or that I don't enjoy. But I really love the relational piece of working one-on-one with clients. I personally didn't want to manage a huge team of organizers because then that would take me away from doing the thing that I love and that I feel like is my kind of zone of genius and be in a management role, which I didn't want to do. And so I made that intentional decision of how can I build my business in a way that still like emotionally or internally fills my cup, but financially makes sense. And so the way it works for me is I have an email list, just to be totally transparent. So I have an email list that I've been building over the years, and I reach out to them. Sometimes they're sales-driven emails. Sometimes they are just informational-driven emails with a word of encouragement. over the years, we've built out a huge resource library, or large, I should say huge, that's kind of it, but we've built out a large resource library of free organizing tools, whether it's checklists or downloads or whatever it looks like. And that lives free on our website, and that helps drive traffic to get new subscribers in. It costs me nothing to do that. I mean, yes, I have somebody that helps with social media, so I'm paying somebody else to help push this content out. But we're always able, like, for example, we have, a holiday gift checklist. Now I'm putting that out there. Every time someone downloads that, that's helping me grow my subscriber base. So then when I do decide that I have a new offering or I'm doing something else, I now have a larger pool of people that I can market to. Mm-hmm. I do use social media, but I personally, there's so much ick in social media right now, and it's so saturated, and you're so at the mercy of algorithms. And, one of my colleagues just had their account frozen for no good reason. I like to be able to retain as much control as I possibly can. So although I do use social media, I think for me, it's really about how can I grow my list of people so that I can give them content that's going to be impactful and meaningful for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the podcast, it's always been organic reach. I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I put out content, and I've been strategic with SEO for naming titles and using keywords and things of that nature. But other than that, it's just about letting people get to know me for my business. And that is how the business has grown. And then, retaining those in-person relationships so that I can still have those clients, those in-person clients as well.
Cool. Amazing. I love the diversity of everything that you're able to do and touch on, like, all of your skills and all of the things that you love doing, and the ways that you show up in your business, that you still have those clients, that you still build those connections, but that you're also able to branch out bigger, help people at scale, and still be true to, like, the parts of your business that you love. It's so inspiring. And I love everything that you've said about being really intentional with that and knowing your bandwidth and knowing your limits. And limits are only limits when you decide it's a limit, right? It's actually just like a boundary. It's just a decision of this is where I want to go. It's not like, oh, that's all we can do. It's literally just on purpose, deciding how big you want to build your business, how many people you want to reach. So I love that. I love the intention.
And the other thing I just want to say is, over the course of the 15 plus years that I've been doing this, I've leaned in to different parts of my business at different times based on what was going on in my life. When my girls were younger, I didn't do as much travel and speaking because it was important for me, and to no judgment to anybody, but it was important for me to be there with them when they were younger. So being one-on-one with clients worked really well. And that season, as they got older and went off to college and whatnot, and I had more flexibility, if someone was like, hey, can you come speak here? And I was like, great. Or, hey, can you lean into this? I was able to do different things. I was also able to dedicate more time to my business in certain seasons of my life. Whether that is you're starting an entrepreneurial thing while you still have a full-time job. Maybe you're just dipping your toe into entrepreneurship for the first time. You might not have a full 40 or 80 hours a week. You may have 10 hours a week. So just be mindful of whatever time you have, what is the best way that you can use the allotted time that's given to you in this particular season that you're in with your business.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, there's so much more I know we could talk about. I'm glad that people can go learn from you in all the places. So give us the best place to connect with you if they want to learn more.
Yep. Thank you so much. The hub for everything would be my website, which is simply the letter B, like boyorganize.com. From there, there's all the free resources. You can follow me on the socials. You can get our newsletter, any of those things. Connect up with us. There's a contact form if you have questions or want any information. So simply beorganize.com, and that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laurie. This was such a pleasure to just dig into your business, explain how you've built what you have and how other people can follow in some of those footsteps. So I appreciate you for coming on and sharing what you did.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for that episode and that conversation. It was so fun to learn from your journey, some of the things that are still applicable today about building a service providing business and even taking that digital, being able to reach more people, help more people, and understanding how to scale when you have a skill that you actually enjoy and love and want to get it into more people's lives. And thank you so much to our show sponsors for making today's episode possible. Without your generosity, we could not produce this amazing content for our listeners. Until next time, my friends, class dismissed.